Welcome to Poirot's Mysteries, the channel where we dive into the timeless tales of intrigue and deduction from the world of Agatha Christie. I'm your host, Nolan Drake, and today I have a special treat for you. A brand new Hercule Poirot mystery crafted in the classic style. Settle in with a cup of tea, perhaps by a cozy fire, as we embark on Murder Inside the Winter Palais. This is a long one, perfect for those relaxing evenings or long drives. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventure. And as always, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, London, New York, or somewhere snowy like the Alps. Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Winter Palais. In the winter of 1925, where the Swiss Alps cradled their peaks in blankets of frost, the Winter Palais stood as a monument to extravagance. Perched precariously on the snowy slopes of Mount Iger's foothills, the hotel was a glittering beacon for Europe's elite, a place where wealth and ambition mingled with the crisp mountain air. Its marble corridors, polished to a mirror sheen, echoed with the clink of champagne glasses and the soft rustle of silk gowns. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across vaulted ceilings, and the scent of pine logs burning in grand fireplaces mingled with the faint tang of expensive cigars. Outside, the world was a silent expanse of white, broken only by the occasional jingle of sleigh bells or the crunch of boots on fresh snow. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a moustache as impeccable as his reputation, had not planned to venture into this frozen paradise. He was comfortably ensconced in his modest London apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, savouring what he insisted was a well-earned retirement. His days were filled with the small pleasures of order. Arranging his collection of rare books, sipping tisane brewed to precise specifications, and occasionally indulging in a stroll through Hyde Park to exercise what he called his little grey cells. Retirement, however, had a way of eluding Poirot. The world, it seemed, was loath to let his genius rest. On a particularly dreary London morning, as fog curled around the gas lamps outside, a telegram arrived with a sharp rap at his door. The boy who delivered it shivered in his thin coat, and Poirot, with a paternal cluck, tipped him generously before unfolding the message. It was from his old friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, whose penchant for trouble was as reliable as Poirot's own precision. The telegram was brief but urgent. "Poirot, old chap, imperative you join us at Winter Palais, Swiss Alps. Grave matter. Discretion essential. Hastings." Poirot's dark eyes gleamed as he stroked his moustache, the waxed tips quivering slightly. "Ah, Hastings," he murmured, a smile tugging at his lips. "Always you find the chaos, mon ami." The words grave matter danced in his mind, stirring those grey cells into a familiar hum. Retirement could wait. A mystery beckoned. He packed with meticulous care, selecting his warmest overcoat, a pair of patent leather shoes polished to a gleam despite the impracticality for snow, and a small case containing his tisane herbs, a silver spoon, and his ever-present leather-bound notebook. The journey began with the Orient Express, its luxurious compartments a fitting prelude to the opulence awaiting him. From Paris, he transferred to a private sleigh, its horses snorting clouds of steam as they climbed the winding paths to the Palais. The air grew sharper, the landscape more desolate, until the hotel emerged from the twilight like a vision, its countless windows glowing like fireflies against the darkening sky. The Winter Palais was more than a hotel. It was a world unto itself. The grand foyer welcomed Poirot with a rush of warmth and grandeur. Marble columns soared to a frescoed ceiling, depicting cherubs and alpine vistas. Potted palms swayed gently in the draught from a roaring fire, and the air carried the faint sweetness of mulled wine. A liveried doorman, his brass buttons gleaming, took Poirot's coat and ushered him toward a figure waiting anxiously by a gilded staircase. "Poirot! Thank heavens you've come!" Captain Hastings, ever the picture of earnest disarray, hurried forward. His tweed suit was slightly rumpled, and his face bore the flushed look of a man grappling with events beyond his control. "It's a dashed peculiar business, old chap. I wouldn't have wired you if it weren't serious." Poirot raised a hand, his expression serene but his eyes sharp. "Calm yourself, Hastings. Tell me, what is this grave matter that brings Hercule Poirot to the Alps?" Hastings glanced around, lowering his voice. "It's Lady Evelyn Carrington. She's hosting a private gathering here. Small, exclusive, you know the sort. But there's tension, Poirot, thicker than the fog on the Thames. I've a bad feeling about it." Before Poirot could press further, a woman approached with the poise of a queen. Lady Evelyn Carrington, in her 50s, was a striking figure. Tall, with iron-grey hair swept into an elegant chignon, and eyes that missed nothing. Her black velvet gown shimmered under the chandelier light, and a string of pearls gleamed at her throat. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice warm but measured, "what an honour to have you among us. Arthur has spoken so highly of your unique talents. Do join us for dinner. We have a select group, perfect for a little winter diversion." Poirot bowed, his manners impeccable. "Madame, the pleasure is mine. I am, as always, at the service of truth." Dinner was served in the Palais's opulent dining hall, where long windows framed the endless snow beyond. The table was a masterpiece. Silver candelabras, bone china, and crystal goblets reflecting the flicker of candlelight. The menu featured foie gras, roasted quail, and a delicate consommé, each course paired with wines that spoke of old vineyards and older fortune. As the guests took their seats, Poirot observed them with the precision of a watchmaker, noting every glance, every gesture. There was Baron Heinrich von Klaus, a German industrialist whose booming laugh filled the room. His florid face and heavy frame suggested a life of excess, and his brandy glass rarely left his hand. His young wife, Isabella von Klaus, was a contrast in every way, an Italian beauty with raven hair and almond eyes that flickered with secrets. She spoke little, her gaze often drifting to the far end of the table. Dr. Elias Thorne, a British physician renowned for his work in toxicology, adjusted his spectacles with nervous fingers. His thin frame and pallid complexion gave him the air of a man more at home with books than people, yet his eyes held a sharpness that intrigued Poirot. Miss Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's American niece, was the opposite. Vivacious, with golden curls and a laugh that rang like a bell. She wore a daring emerald gown that drew every eye, especially Hastings, who blushed at her every quip. Finally, there was Mr. Reginald Forsyth, a London banker with a sleek fox-like demeanour. His tailored suit and slicked-back hair spoke of ambition, but his eyes darted nervously when the Baron mentioned business. Poirot noted the tension between them, a subtle undercurrent beneath the polite chatter. As the meal progressed, the conversation turned lively but strained. Baron von Klaus argued heatedly with Forsyth over a failed investment in a Rhine Valley factory. "You assured me it was sound," the Baron thundered, his fist rattling the table. Forsyth's smile was tight. "Markets are unpredictable, Heinrich. You know that." Isabella excused herself briefly, claiming a headache, and Dr. Thorne offered to fetch her a remedy. His departure and return noted by Poirot's watchful gaze. Clara, meanwhile, teased Hastings about his English stiffness, earning a chuckle from Lady Evelyn, who presided over the table like a benevolent monarch. Yet her eyes, Poirot observed, lingered longest on the Baron and Forsyth, as if weighing their every word. The evening wore on, and the snow fell heavier outside, cloaking the Palais in an eerie silence. The guests retired to the drawing-room for coffee and liqueurs, where a grand piano stood unused, its polished surface reflecting the firelight. Poirot declined a cigar, but accepted a small glass of crème de menthe, sipping it thoughtfully as he listened to the undercurrents of the room. Hastings at his side whispered, "See what I mean, Poirot? Something's brewing. The Baron's been drinking too much, and Forsyth looks like he's hiding something. Even Lady Evelyn, she's too calm, don't you think?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Patience, Hastings. The human heart, it reveals itself in time. We observe, we listen, and the truth, it will emerge." As the clock struck 10, the guests began to disperse, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpets. Poirot lingered, his gaze sweeping the room one last time. The Winter Palais, for all its splendour, felt like a stage set for a drama yet to unfold. And Hercule Poirot, as always, was ready to take his place at its centre. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Snow. The morning sun rose over the Swiss Alps, its pale light filtering through the heavy drapes of the Winter Palais, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The hotel, a fortress of luxury amidst the snow, seemed to hold its breath as the first whispers of unease stirred among its guests. Hercule Poirot, awakened by the faint clatter of porcelain in the corridor, dressed with his usual precision, his black suit immaculate, his moustache waxed to perfection, and made his way to the breakfast-room. The air was thick with the aroma of freshly baked croissants, strong coffee, and the faint metallic tang of snow carried in shoes on guests' boots. Captain Hastings was already there, seated at a round table laden with silver platters of pastries, jams, and a steaming samovar. His face, usually bright with optimism, was clouded with worry. He leaned forward as Poirot approached, his voice low. "Something's afoot, Poirot. Last night, after you retired, there was a proper row in the smoking room. Baron von Klaus accused Reginald Forsyth of mismanaging funds, called him a swindler, no less. Lady Evelyn had to step in to calm things down." Poirot settled into a chair, selecting a brioche and a cup of tisane with deliberate care. "A row, you say? Most interesting, Hastings. The passions of men, they bubble like a pot left too long on the fire. Tell me, what else did you observe?" Hastings glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. Well, it wasn't just the Baron. Isabella, his wife, seemed awfully upset, kept to herself after the argument. And that Dr. Thorne, he was hovering about her like a moth to a flame. Offered her some sort of pill for her nerves. Clara Beaumont was all laughs as usual, but I swear she was watching everyone like a hawk. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he sipped his tisane. "The human heart, mon ami, it betrays itself in the smallest gestures. We shall observe, and the truth will reveal itself." The breakfast-room gradually filled with the other guests. Lady Evelyn Carrington entered first, her black silk dress rustling softly, her expression serene, but her eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. She greeted Poirot with a nod, her smile polite but distant. "I trust you slept well, Monsieur Poirot. The mountain air is quite restorative." "Indeed, madame," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "Though I suspect the air here carries more than freshness. It carries secrets, no?" Her smile tightened, but she said nothing, turning to converse with Clara Beaumont, who bounced in wearing a bright blue dress that seemed to defy the sombre mood. Clara's laughter rang out as she teased Hastings about his choice of marmalade over jam, but Poirot noted her quick glances toward the door, as if expecting someone. Baron Heinrich von Klaus arrived next, his heavy footsteps echoing on the marble floor. His face was flushed, whether from the cold or last night's brandy, Poirot could not yet determine. He muttered a greeting and piled his plate with sausages. Avoiding Forsyth, who slipped in quietly, his fox-like features taut with strain. Dr. Elias Thorne was the last to appear, his spectacles glinting as he adjusted them nervously, a medical bag tucked under his arm. The group was scheduled for a sleigh ride through the snowy trails, a diversion arranged by Lady Evelyn to lift spirits. The sleighs, drawn by sturdy horses with bells on their harnesses, waited outside, their wooden frames gleaming under the morning sun. The guests bundled into furs and scarves, their breath visible in the frigid air. Poirot, wrapped in a woolen overcoat, observed the dynamics. Isabella von Klaus, pale and withdrawn, claimed a headache and declined the outing, retiring to her suite. Dr. Thorne offered her a sedative from his bag, his hand lingering a moment too long as he handed her the vial. She accepted it with a faint smile, her eyes avoiding her husband's. Clara, meanwhile, flirted shamelessly with the Baron, complimenting his fur-lined coat and laughing at his gruff attempts at humour. "Oh, Baron, you must tell me more about your factories. They sound positively thrilling," she said, her voice dripping with charm. The Baron's chest puffed out, but Isabella's absence cast a shadow over his mood. Forsyth, seated in a separate sleigh, kept his eyes on the horizon, his gloved hands clenched. The ride was picturesque but tense, the crunch of snow under the runners punctuated by stilted conversation. Poirot, seated beside Hastings, noted every detail. The Baron's forced joviality, Clara's calculated charm, Forsyth's silence, and Lady Evelyn's watchful gaze from the led sleigh. The snow fell lightly, dusting their furs, and the mountains loomed like silent sentinels. That evening, as a blizzard began to howl outside, sealing the Palais from the outside world, the guests gathered in the library for cognac and cards. The room was a haven of warmth, its walls lined with leather-bound books, a roaring fire casting flickering shadows. A heavy oak table held decks of cards and crystal decanters, and the air was thick with the scent of aged spirits and beeswax. Baron von Klaus, his mood darkened by drink, dominated the conversation, regaling the group with tales of his industrial triumphs. "In Germany, we build empires," he boomed, sloshing his cognac. Forsyth, seated across from him, forced a smile but said little. Isabella, who had rejoined the group, sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Dr. Thorne hovered nearby, offering her a glass of water, which she declined with a shake of her head. Clara dealt the cards with a flourish, her laughter cutting through the tension, while Lady Evelyn observed from a high-backed chair, her fingers tracing the pearls at her throat. As the clock neared midnight, the Baron rose abruptly, his face flushed. "Enough of this," he declared. "I have papers to review in my suite. Important business, you understand." He swayed slightly, steadying himself on the table before striding out, his footsteps heavy on the parquet floor. The party dispersed soon after, the storm outside rattling the windows. Poirot lingered, his eyes scanning the room. He noted the Baron's suite door, visible through the library's open archway, as it closed with a decisive click, followed by the unmistakable sound of a bolt sliding into place. The key, he knew, was on the inside, a detail that would soon prove crucial. It was just past dawn when the Palais awoke to chaos. Clara Beaumont's scream pierced the stillness, echoing through the marble halls. "Uncle Heinrich, he's not answering, and there's blood under the door." Poirot, roused from his room, joined the rush to the Baron's suite on the second floor. Hastings was already there, his face pale as he pounded on the heavy oak door. Lady Evelyn, in a silk robe, stood nearby, her composure fraying. Forsyth and Thorne arrived moments later, the banker's eyes darting nervously, the doctor clutching his medical bag. The door was locked, the bolt engaged from within. The windows, Poirot noted, were sealed against the cold, their heavy shutters barred. A thin trickle of crimson seeped from beneath the door, staining the cream-coloured carpet. Hastings and Forsyth, at Poirot's nod, threw their weight against the door, splintering the frame. Inside, the sight was one of horror. Baron Heinrich von Klaus lay sprawled on a Persian rug, his massive frame unnaturally still. A dagger, its ornate handle glinting in the lamplight, protruded from his chest. Blood pooled around him, dark and viscous, and his eyes stared blankly at the frescoed ceiling. The room showed no signs of struggle. Papers were neatly stacked on a mahogany desk, a half-smoked cigar rested in a crystal ashtray, and a glass of brandy stood untouched beside it. The door's bolt was still engaged, the key in the lock, and the windows remained sealed, their latches rusted from disuse. The guests gasped, Clara clutching Lady Evelyn's arm. Isabella stifling a sob. Dr. Thorne knelt beside the body, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse. "He's gone," he said, his voice hollow. "Dead for hours, I'd wager." Poirot stepped forward, his small frame commanding the room. He knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the scene. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his eyes narrowing as he took in the locked door, the sealed windows, and the blood. A locked room, an impossible crime. And yet, mes amis, the impossible is never so. It is merely a puzzle awaiting the order and method of Hercule. Poirot! The storm outside raged on, trapping them all within the Palais's gilded walls. The stage was set, and the mystery had begun. Chapter 3. The Shadow of Suspicion. The Winter Palais, its grandeur muted by the tragedy within, seemed to hold its breath as the blizzard raged outside, sealing the hotel in a cocoon of snow. The morning light, filtered through heavy clouds, cast a pale glow over the marble corridors, where the echo of Clara Beaumont's scream still lingered. Hercule Poirot stood in the Baron's suite, his small frame silhouetted against the ornate wallpaper, his dark eyes scanning every detail of the grim scene. The body of Baron Heinrich von Klaus lay sprawled on the Persian rug, the dagger in his chest a stark punctuation to the opulence around him. The locked door, the sealed windows, and the blood pooling beneath the body formed a puzzle that Poirot's little grey cells were already dissecting with relish. Captain Hastings, pale and fidgeting beside him, muttered, "It's impossible, Poirot. The door was bolted from the inside, the windows barred. How could anyone have done this?" Poirot's moustache twitched as he raised a gloved hand. "Impossible, mon ami! No, no. The impossible is merely the improbable in disguise. We shall find the method, for there is always a method." The local Swiss authorities, delayed by the storm, had yet to arrive in force. A single officer, Inspector Lucas Meyer, had braved the blizzard on skis, arriving at the Palais with snow clinging to his moustache and a no-nonsense air. He was a burly man, his red cheeks flushed from the cold, and his accent carried the clipped precision of the region. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, bowing slightly, Your reputation precedes you. Until my men can break through the snow, I would be grateful for your assistance. A locked-room murder. It is not a thing we see often in these mountains." Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene, but his eyes alight with purpose. "But of course, Inspector. The little grey cells, they are at your service. Let us proceed with order and method." The suite was cordoned off, the guests instructed to remain in the drawing-room under Lady Evelyn's watchful eye. Poirot began his examination with meticulous care. The dagger, he noted, was from the hotel's own collection. An ornate piece with a silver handle, part of a decorative set displayed in the library. Its blade was clean except for the blood, suggesting a single precise thrust. The Baron's body showed no signs of a struggle. His silk dressing-gown was undisturbed, his hands free of defensive wounds. Dr. Elias Thorne, hovering nearby with his medical bag, estimated death at around 1 a.m., based on the onset of rigor mortis. "A swift death," Thorne said, adjusting his spectacles nervously. "The dagger likely pierced the heart." Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers tracing the air above the wound. "And yet, Doctor, the absence of struggle is curious, no? A man of the Baron's size, he does not submit so easily." He turned to the room itself. The desk held neatly stacked papers, business contracts, Poirot noted, written in German and English. A half-smoked cigar rested in a crystal ashtray, its ash undisturbed. A brandy glass, barely touched, stood beside it. The windows, double-paned and sealed against the alpine cold, showed no signs of tampering, their iron shutters locked tight. The door's heavy bolt was still engaged, the key in the lock, its position confirming the Baron had secured himself inside. "Curious," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing as he examined the key. "Very curious indeed." Inspector Meyer organized interviews in the drawing-room, a spacious chamber with velvet drapes and a roaring fire that did little to warm the chilled atmosphere. The guests, summoned one by one, sat on plush armchairs, their faces a mix of shock, fear, and suspicion. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his small frame commanding attention, while Hastings scribbled notes in a leather-bound journal, his pen scratching nervously. Lady Evelyn Carrington was first, her composure a stark contrast to the chaos of the morning. She sat with her hands folded, her black silk dress absorbing the firelight. "Heinrich was like a brother to my late husband," she said, her voice steady. "They built their fortunes together, diamonds, you know, from the African mines, but Heinrich had enemies, debts, risky ventures. He was not a cautious man." Poirot tilted his head. "And you, madame, you had no quarrel with him?" Her eyes flickered, but she met his gaze. "None worth mentioning, though I will not deny his death may simplify certain financial matters." "Motive?" Poirot noted silently. "Her inheritance could grow if the Baron's ventures collapsed." Isabella von Klaus followed, her raven hair dishevelled, her eyes red from crying. She clutched a lace handkerchief, her voice trembling. "My husband was difficult, cruel at times, demanding, but I loved him in my way. I could never—" She broke off, sobbing delicately. Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. "And yet, Madame von Klaus, there are whispers of indiscretions. Your husband, he suspected, perhaps?" Her cheeks flushed, but she shook her head. "Lies, gossip, I was faithful." "Motive? Infidelity rumours, and the Baron's fortune would pass to her upon his death." Dr. Elias Thorne was next, his thin frame hunched as he fidgeted with his spectacles. "I saw the Baron last night," he admitted. "Prescribed him a tonic for his heart last week. He complained of palpitations, but this? Preposterous! I'm a physician, not a murderer." His hands trembled as he spoke, and Poirot noted the faint chemical scent clinging to his coat. "And your expertise, Doctor," Poirot said softly. "It extends to poisons, does it not?" Thorne paled. "Toxicology, yes, for medical purposes. I've done nothing wrong. Motive? A past scandal involving poisoned patients, whispered about in medical circles." Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's niece, entered with a nervous laugh, her emerald gown replaced by a sombre grey dress that did little to dim her vibrancy. "Uncle Heinrich promised me a dowry," she said, twirling a curl around her finger. "We argued about it, a week ago in London. He said I was reckless with money. But murder? Heavens, no!" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And your debts, mademoiselle? They are considerable, non?" She blushed, her smile faltering. "A few gambling losses, nothing serious." Motive, greed, and a desperate need for funds to maintain her lifestyle. Reginald Forsyth was last, his slick demeanour fraying at the edges. Sweat beaded on his brow despite the cold. "Business disputes with the Baron, yes," he said, his voice clipped. "He accused me of mismanaging funds. Utter nonsense. I was in my room all night, as the maid can confirm." Poirot leaned forward. "And yet, monsieur, the Baron's accusations, they could ruin you, could they not?" Forsyth's jaw tightened. "I'm a respectable man, Monsieur Poirot. I had no reason to kill him. Motive? Embezzlement, and the threat of exposure that could destroy his career." As the interviews concluded, the guests were dismissed, their footsteps heavy as they returned to their suites. Hastings, mopping his brow, turned to Poirot. "It's baffling, old chap. 5 suspects, all with reasons to want the Baron dead. But that locked room, how could any of them have done it?" Poirot paced before the fire, his hands clasped behind his back. "The method, Hastings, it is there, hidden in plain sight. The locked door, the sealed windows, they are not barriers but clues. We must look beyond the obvious, to the subtleties of human nature." He paused, his gaze drifting to the snow piling against the windows. "Consider, mon ami, the timing. The Baron locks himself in, yet someone enters or does not. The blood, the dagger, the undisturbed room, these are pieces of a puzzle. And Hercule Poirot, he does not rest until the puzzle is complete." Inspector Meyer, listening quietly, nodded. "We've searched the room, monsieur. Nothing out of place, save for the body. No footprints in the snow outside. The windows are too high, and the storm would have erased them anyway." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "And yet, Inspector, there is always a trace, a thread, a scent, a whisper of intent. We shall find it." As the day wore on, the Palais grew quieter, the guests retreating into their private fears. Poirot lingered in the Baron's suite, his mind turning over the details. The key in the lock, the bolt, the cigar still smouldering hours after death. Something nagged at him, a discrepancy too small to name but too significant to ignore. The storm outside showed no sign of abating, and the Winter Palais, for all its splendour, felt like a gilded cage, holding both victims and secrets captive. Chapter 4. Echoes of Deception. The Winter Palais, entombed in snow, seemed to pulse with secrets as the investigation into Baron Heinrich von Klaus's murder deepened. The blizzard outside had thickened, its howling winds rattling the sealed windows, while inside the air was heavy with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm amidst the storm, moved through the Baron's suite with the precision of a watchmaker, his dark eyes catching every detail. The locked room, with its bolted door and barred windows, remained an enigma, but Poirot's little grey cells were alive with possibilities. The clues, he knew, were there, hidden not in chaos, but in the deceptive order of the scene. Captain Hastings trailed behind, his notebook clutched tightly, his face a mix of awe and frustration. "It's maddening, Poirot," he said, gesturing at the undisturbed room. "The dagger, the blood, the locked door, nothing adds up. It's as if the killer vanished into thin air." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Vanished, mon ami? No, no. The killer is among us, as solid as you or I. But they are clever, weaving a tapestry of deception. We must unravel it thread by thread." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his burly frame filling the doorway, had set up a makeshift office in the library, where he pored over the hotel's guest logs and staff schedules. The Swiss police were still stranded by the storm, leaving him reliant on Poirot's expertise. "We've searched the Baron's papers," Meyer reported, his voice gruff. "Contracts mostly, business deals gone sour, but nothing obvious pointing to murder." Poirot nodded, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. "The obvious, Inspector, is rarely the truth. Let us examine the subtleties." The morning was spent scouring the suite for clues, each discovery adding layers to the puzzle. Near the Baron's body, Poirot found a faint footprint in the blood, a small, delicate mark, too petite for the Baron's boots, and mismatched to any of the men's shoes. "A woman's, perhaps," Poirot mused, crouching to examine it. But when compared to Isabella von Klaus's boots, the size was wrong, too small, almost childlike. Clara Beaumont's slippers were closer, but she swore she hadn't entered the room. "I was in my own suite, Monsieur Poirot," she protested, her wide eyes brimming with sincerity. A red herring, perhaps, or a planted clue. In the Baron's desk, Poirot uncovered a torn letter, its edges singed as if someone had tried to burn it. The fragment read, "Pay or your secrets will be exposed, E.T." The initials sent a ripple through the group when Poirot shared the find with Inspector Meyer. "Elias Thorne?" Hastings whispered, glancing at the doctor who was hovering nearby, his spectacles glinting nervously. Or could it be Evelyn? Lady Carrington? The ambiguity gnawed at Poirot, who tucked the letter into his notebook for later scrutiny. Dr. Thorne's medical bag left in the drawing-room yielded another clue. Among the vials of laudanum and antiseptic, Poirot found a small bottle of digitalis, a heart medication, but also a potent poison in the wrong hands. "For my patients," Thorne insisted, his voice cracking. "The Baron had heart trouble. I prescribed it last week." But Poirot noted the bottle's seal was broken, the liquid inside slightly cloudy, as if tampered with. Thorne's hands shook as he explained, his alibi, reading in his room at the time of the murder, unverified. Clara Beaumont's suite, searched with her reluctant permission, revealed a hidden diary tucked beneath a mattress. Its pages were filled with scrawled entries of frustration. "Uncle Heinrich cut my allowance again, says I'm reckless. He'll regret it." Another entry, dated days before the trip, hinted at a secret meeting with an unnamed man in London. He promises to help, but at what cost? Clara, when confronted, laughed it off. "Just a silly diary, Monsieur Poirot. I vent my frustrations, that's all." But her gambling debts, whispered about in the Palais corridors, suggested a motive rooted in desperation. Reginald Forsyth's alibi began to fray under scrutiny. A maid, timid and wide-eyed, admitted to seeing him in the hallway near the Baron's suite around midnight, not in his room as he claimed. "He was pacing, sir," she whispered to Inspector Meyer. "Looked agitated, like he was waiting for someone." Forsyth, when pressed, grew defensive. "I couldn't sleep, that's all. The Baron's accusations were weighing on me. His motive, fear of exposure for embezzling funds, grew sharper in Poirot's mind. Lady Evelyn, ever the poised matriarch, was not above suspicion. During a search of the common areas, Poirot found a pearl clasp from her necklace near the Baron's suite, half hidden beneath a rug. "It must have fallen," she said coolly, but her fingers lingered on the remaining pearls at her throat, betraying a flicker of unease. Was it a careless loss or a deliberate plant? Her financial ties to the Baron, tangled in their shared diamond ventures, suggested a motive. His death could untangle her from risky investments. To stir the pot, Poirot gathered the guests for afternoon tea in the dining hall, where silver trays of scones and clotted cream contrasted with the grim mood. He moved among them, his questions gentle but pointed, planting seeds of doubt. "The letter, mes amis," he said, holding up the torn fragment. "E.T., who among you hides behind these initials?" Isabella flinched at the mention, her eyes darting to Thorn. Forsyth's teacup rattled in its saucer. Clara laughed nervously, while Lady Evelyn's gaze remained steady, almost too steady. Another clue surfaced unexpectedly. A glove, monogrammed with an H, found under the Baron's bed. Hastings gasped when he saw it. "Good Lord, Poirot, that's mine!" But the glove was pristine, free of blood, and its placement felt staged, as if meant to be found. "A distraction," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing. "Someone wishes to muddy the waters." As the day waned, Poirot returned to the Baron's suite, his mind turning over the clues. The footprint, too small for any known suspect, suggested either an outsider, impossible given the storm, or a clever ruse. The torn letter pointed to blackmail, but its singed edges hinted at panic, not calculation. The digitalis bottle raised questions of poison, yet the dagger suggested a more theatrical intent. The glove, the clasp, the maid's sighting of Forsyth, all were pieces, but none fit perfectly. He stood by the sealed window, gazing at the snow piling against the glass. "The locked room," he said to Hastings, who hovered nearby. "It is not a barrier, but a stage. The killer wishes us to see only the impossible, to blind us to the simple." Hastings frowned. "But what's simple about it? The door was bolted, the key inside. No one could get in or out." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "And yet, mon ami, someone did. Or perhaps no one needed to." He tapped his temple, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The little grey cells, they see what the eyes cannot. The truth, it is close." The storm outside showed no sign of abating, and the Palais's gilded halls felt increasingly like a trap. Poirot's questions had stirred unease among the guests, their glances sharper, their silences heavier. Isabella avoided Thorn, who busied himself with his medical bag. Clara's laughter grew forced, while Forsyth's nervous pacing intensified. Lady Evelyn, ever watchful, seemed to tighten her grip on the group, as if sensing the web tightening. As night fell, Poirot retired to his suite, his notebook filled with sketches and annotations. The clues were mounting, but so were the deceptions. A bloody footprint, a torn letter, a tampered vial, a misplaced clasp, a planted glove. Each was a thread in a tapestry of lies. The killer, Poirot knew, was watching, waiting for him to falter. But Hercule Poirot never faltered. The truth, he vowed, would be his. Chapter 5. Storms Within and Without. The Winter Palais, cocooned in the relentless blizzard, seemed to tighten its grip on its inhabitants, as if the snow itself conspired to keep the truth buried. The murder of Baron Heinrich von Klaus had cast a pall over the hotel's opulent halls, where the flicker of chandeliers now felt like a mockery of warmth. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the mounting complexities, moved through the Palais with a quiet intensity, his little grey cells humming as the web of clues grew ever more tangled. The locked room, the dagger, the blood, each element of the crime was a piece in a puzzle that refused to resolve. Yet Poirot knew the solution lay just beyond the veil of deception. Captain Hastings, his loyal companion, trailed him through the marble corridors, his face etched with worry. "It's getting worse, Poirot," he said, his voice low as they passed a maid polishing a silver candelabrum. "The guests are at each other's throats. I overheard Isabella and Dr. Thorne arguing in the conservatory. Sounded like they were ending something. And Clara, she's been acting strange, locking herself in her room." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he adjusted his impeccable tie. "Strange, you say?" "Bon, the strangeness, Hastings. It is the crack through which the light of truth enters. Let us see what new shadows this day casts." The morning brought a brief respite from the storm, the snow falling lightly now, revealing a world of white beyond the palace's frosted windows. Inspector Lucas Meyer, still stranded without his full team, had taken to pacing the library, his frustration evident in his heavy steps. "We've searched every corner of this blasted hotel," he grumbled to Poirot. "No hidden weapons, no secret exits, just that infernal locked room." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "Patience, Inspector. The room, it speaks, if we listen. But first, we must unravel the motives that bind these suspects." A telegram delivered by a breathless porter who had braved the snow added a new twist to the investigation. It was from the Baron's solicitor in Berlin, detailing his will. The bulk of his fortune was to pass to Isabella von Klaus, but with a clause, if infidelity was proven, the estate would transfer to Clara Beaumont, Lady Evelyn's niece. The news sent ripples through the group when Poirot shared it discreetly with Inspector Meyer. "Infidelity," Poirot mused, his moustache twitching. "It is a motive that burns like fire." The investigation took a darker turn when Poirot and Hastings overheard a heated exchange in the conservatory, where glass walls framed a jungle of potted ferns. Isabella, her voice sharp, hissed at Dr. Thorne, "It's over, Elias. I can't do this any more, not after everything." Thorne's reply was inaudible, but his face was pale, his hands clenched. Poirot noted the intimacy of their tone, the familiarity that went beyond mere acquaintance. A lover's quarrel, perhaps, or something more sinister? A search of the palace's service areas revealed a curious detail. A dumbwaiter, used to ferry meals from the kitchen to the upper suites, passed near the Baron's room. Its hatch was locked, however, and the mechanism too small for a person to use. "A red herring, perhaps," Poirot said, tapping the wooden panel. "But even a false clue tells a story." The most startling revelation came from Dr. Thorne, who, under pressure from Inspector Meyer, conducted an impromptu autopsy in the hotel's cold storage room, the only space suitable for such a grim task. "The dagger wasn't the cause of death," Thorne announced, his voice unsteady as he wiped his spectacles. "The Baron was poisoned first. Digitalis, I'd wager, given the symptoms. Irregular heartbeat, cyanosis. The stab wound was post-mortem, meant to mislead." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Poison, Doctor? From your own supply, perhaps?" Thorne protested, but the cloudy digitalis vial from his bag loomed large in Poirot's mind. The twist shifted the investigation. The locked room was no longer the central mystery, but rather the method of poisoning in a sealed suite. Complications multiplied. Clara Beaumont, found sobbing in her room, claimed she had attempted to take laudanum from Thorne's bag to end her misery. Her wrists bore faint marks, but the bottle was untouched, suggesting a staged cry for sympathy. "I just wanted Uncle Heinrich's approval," she wept to Poirot. "He thought me a fool, but I didn't kill him." Her gambling debts, however, painted a picture of desperation, and her diary's cryptic entries hinted at deeper secrets. Reginald Forsyth's position grew shakier when a porter reported finding forged documents in his luggage, ledgers suggesting he had siphoned funds from the Baron's Rhine Valley venture. "A misunderstanding," Forsyth insisted, his voice tight. "I was reorganizing accounts, nothing more." But the documents, unrelated to the murder, muddied his alibi, as they suggested he had been working late, not sleeping as claimed. Lady Evelyn, ever the enigma, revealed a piece of her past when pressed by Poirot. "Heinrich was blackmailing me," she admitted in the drawing-room, her voice low. "My husband's death. There were rumours. It wasn't an accident. Heinrich knew something, threatened to expose it." Her composure cracked, her fingers twisting her pearl necklace. Was her motive to silence the Baron before he ruined her? Hastings, ever loyal, confided his fears to Poirot as they walked the snow-dusted terrace. "I'm worried for Lady Evelyn, Poirot. She's hiding something, but she's no killer. And Clara, those marks on her wrists, what if someone's targeting her next?" Poirot patted his friend's arm. "All hide something, Hastings. The Baron, he was a man of secrets, and his death has opened a Pandora's box. But fear not. The truth, it emerges like a flower through the snow." The day unfolded with further discoveries. A maid reported seeing a shadow moving near the Baron's suite the night of the murder. But the blizzard's darkness made it impossible to identify. A search of Isabella's room turned up a vial of sedative. Identical to Thorne's, but empty. Had she used it, or was it another plant? The dumbwaiter, when inspected again, showed faint scratches on its lock, suggesting tampering, though no clear evidence linked it to the crime. Poirot gathered the guests for dinner, using the occasion to observe their reactions. The dining hall, with its long table and flickering candelabras, was a stage for tension. Isabella avoided Thorne's gaze, her hands trembling as she sipped her wine. Clara's laughter was forced, her eyes darting to the doors. Forsyth ate little, his fork clattering against his plate. Lady Evelyn presided with icy calm, but her fingers lingered on her pearls, one clasp still missing. "The poison?" Poirot said casually, stirring his consommé. "It is a subtle weapon. Who among you, I wonder, has the knowledge to wield it?" Thorne choked on his water, while Isabella's glass slipped, spilling red wine like blood across the tablecloth. The room fell silent, the storm's howl filling the void. As night descended, the Palais grew colder, the firelight casting long shadows. Poirot retired to the library, his notebook open, sketching a timeline of the night's events. The poison, administered before the dagger, suggested a killer with access to the Baron's tonic. Thorne, perhaps, or someone who had tampered with his bag. The staged stab wound pointed to theatrics, a desire to mislead. The dumbwaiter, the shadow, the empty vial, all were threads, but none wove together. "The killer is bold," Poirot murmured, his pen pausing. "They play a game, thinking Hercule Poirot will falter. But they underestimate the order and method of my mind." Hastings, slumped in an armchair, shook his head. "It's a maze, Poirot. Every clue leads to a dead end. What if we're missing something obvious?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Obvious, mon ami. The obvious is the killer's greatest ally. We must look where they do not wish us to see." The storm outside intensified, the wind a mournful wail. The Winter Palais, for all its splendor, felt like a labyrinth of lies, each guest a potential player in a deadly game. Poirot closed his notebook, his resolve unshaken. The truth was near. He could feel it, like the first crack of ice before a thaw. Chapter 6. Threads Unraveled. The Winter Palais, its opulent halls now shadowed by suspicion, seemed to close in on its inhabitants as the blizzard raged on, sealing them within a world of secrets. The murder of Baron Heinrich von Klaus, found dead in a locked room with a dagger in his chest, had woven a tapestry of clues and deceptions that Hercule Poirot was determined to unravel. The revelation that poison, not the dagger, was the true cause of death had shifted the investigation, turning every glance and whisper among the guests into a potential clue. Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm, moved through the hotel with a quiet intensity, his little grey cells working tirelessly to pierce the veil of lies. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, paced the library where Poirot had set up a temporary base, his notebook overflowing with scribbled observations. "It's maddening, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with exasperation. "Poison, a locked room, that blasted dumbwaiter. Every clue points in a different direction. How do you make sense of it?" Poirot, seated at a polished oak table, adjusted his pince-nez and smiled faintly. "Sense, mon ami, is made by order and method. The killer believes they have woven a perfect web, but every web has a weak thread. We shall find it." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his patience fraying as the storm delayed his reinforcements, joined them, his boots leaving wet tracks on the parquet floor. "We've rechecked the staff," he reported, his voice gruff. No one saw anything unusual, save for that shadow the maid mentioned. And the dumbwaiter, it's too small for a person, but the scratches on the lock bother me. Poirot nodded, his fingers tapping his notebook. "The scratches, Inspector. They suggest intent, but not necessarily success. Let us deepen our inquiries." The morning began with a closer examination of the Baron's suite. Poirot, kneeling by the door, noticed a faint smudge of wax on the key's bow, barely visible in the lamplight. "Curieux," he murmured, scraping a sample with a pocket knife. "A key duplicated, perhaps, but how and when?" The wax hinted at a mould, a method to bypass the locked door, but the bolt remained a puzzle. Its mechanism was heavy, requiring force to slide, and no tool marks marred its surface. Outside, Poirot inspected the window, though the snow had piled high against it. A single ski track, faint and nearly buried, curved beneath the ledge, but the window's rusted latches and barred shutters showed no signs of tampering. "A red herring," Poirot mused, "or a clue to timing." The track, he noted, was fresh enough to have been made the night of the murder, before the storm's peak. Interrogations resumed in the drawing room, where the fire's warmth did little to ease the chill of suspicion. Isabella von Klaus, her raven hair pulled back tightly, was first. Under Poirot's gentle but relentless questioning, she cracked. "Yes, I was unfaithful," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Elias, Dr. Thorne, and I, we were lovers. Heinrich suspected, but I swear I didn't kill him." Her confession confirmed a motive. The Baron's will, which would strip her of his fortune if infidelity was proven. But her tears seemed genuine, and Poirot noted her delicate frame, hardly capable of wielding the dagger with such force. Dr. Thorne, summoned next, was visibly shaken, his spectacles slipping down his nose. "Isabella and I were discreet," he insisted, "but murder! I'm a healer, not a killer." Yet his expertise with poisons and the tampered digitalis vial in his bag cast a long shadow. Poirot pressed him on the wax smudge, but Thorne denied any knowledge, his hands trembling as he clutched his medical bag. Clara Beaumont's motive weakened under scrutiny. Her diary, with its angry entries about the Baron, proved to be more bluster than intent. "He promised me a dowry, then reneged," she admitted, her voice petulant, "but I didn't need his money that badly." A search of her financial records, sent via telegram from London, confirmed her debts were substantial but not dire. Her motive, greed, seemed less compelling than before. Reginald Forsyth's alibi, however, gained unexpected strength. A grandfather clock in the hallway, which the maid swore was accurate, chimed at 11:45 p.m., placing Forsyth in his room earlier than his midnight sighting. "I was adjusting my accounts," he said, his voice steadier now. "The Baron's accusations were baseless, but I needed to be sure." The forged ledgers, while incriminating, were unrelated to murder, suggesting Forsyth's guilt lay in finance, not blood. Lady Evelyn Carrington, her composure a fortress, revealed more under Poirot's probing. "Heinrich was like family," she said, her fingers tracing her pearl necklace, "but he held a sword over me. My husband's death, an accident, I swear, but Heinrich had letters suggesting otherwise. He threatened to ruin me." Her motive, blackmail, burned brightly, but her cool demeanour made her an unlikely candidate for the theatrical stab wound. A startling discovery came during a second search of the Baron's suite. Poirot, examining the rug, noticed a faint stain near the door, not blood, but red ink, mixed with a trace of crimson that matched the pool beneath the body. "Mon Dieu!" he exclaimed, his eyes alight. "The blood under the door. It was staged, a mixture to deceive." The killer wished us to believe the crime was fresh when discovered. This revelation shifted the timeline. The poison, likely administered via the Baron's tonic, had killed him hours before the staged blood was placed, suggesting a killer with access to his room earlier in the evening. The ink, Poirot learned from a porter, was from a bottle in the library, accessible to all guests. But who had the cunning to stage such a ruse? Another clue emerged. A faint burn mark on the desk, near the torn letter signed E.T. The singeing, Poirot realized, was deliberate, meant to suggest a hasty attempt to destroy evidence. But the letter's survival pointed to carelessness, or a deliberate plant to mislead. "E.T.," Poirot murmured. "Elias Thorne, or a clever misdirection?" The guests, summoned to the dining hall for luncheon, were visibly strained. Isabella sat apart, her eyes red but dry. Thorne busied himself with his coffee, avoiding her gaze. Clara's laughter was absent, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. Forsyth ate mechanically, while Lady Evelyn presided with an air of strained civility. Poirot, sipping his tisane, dropped a calculated remark. "The ink, mes amis, it tells a story. Who among you writes in red?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, but Isabella's fingers tightened on her glass, and Thorne's spoon clattered. Hastings, whispering to Poirot as they left the hall, was near despair. "It's a labyrinth, Poirot. The wax, the ink, the ski track, how do they fit? And that dumbwaiter. Could someone have used it to slip poison into the room?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The dumbwaiter, it is too small. But the idea of access, it intrigues. The wax on the key, it suggests a duplicate, but the bolt, that is the heart of the mystery. We must consider timing, Hastings. The killer, they are a master of illusion." As evening fell, the Palais grew colder, the storm's wail a constant reminder of their isolation. Poirot returned to the Baron's suite, his mind racing. The wax smudge pointed to a duplicated key, but the bolt required manipulation, perhaps a string pulled through the keyhole. The ski track, the ink, the burn mark, all were distractions, yet each held a grain of truth. The poison, delivered via the tonic, required intimacy with the Baron's habits, pointing to someone close. "The killer is bold," Poirot said to himself, standing by the sealed window. "They play with fire, thinking Hercule Poirot will be blinded by their smoke, but the truth, it is near." The day ended with no arrests, but the threads of the mystery were beginning to align. The guests, trapped by the storm, watched each other with growing dread, their secrets teetering on the edge of exposure. Poirot closed his notebook, his resolve unshaken. The locked room was not a fortress, but a stage, and the killer's performance, he knew, was nearing its final act. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The Winter Palais, cloaked in the relentless snow of the Swiss Alps, stood as a gilded prison. Its opulent halls heavy with the weight of Baron Heinrich von Klaus's murder. The blizzard outside roared with undiminished fury, sealing the guests within a web of suspicion and secrets. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating quiet authority, had spent days unravelling the threads of the locked room mystery. Poison, not the dagger, as the true cause of death. A staged bloodstain of red ink, a wax-smudged key hinting at duplication. Each clue brought him closer to the truth, yet the killer remained a shadow, elusive and cunning. Now, as the storm reached its peak, Poirot sensed the moment for revelation was near. Captain Hastings, his face etched with exhaustion, stood by Poirot in the library, where the fire's glow cast flickering shadows across leather-bound books. "We're so close, Poirot," he said, his voice a mix of hope and frustration. "The poison, the wax, that blasted ski track. Surely you've got it figured out by now." Poirot's moustache twitched, his dark eyes gleaming. "Close, mon ami, but not yet complete. The puzzle, it is like a mosaic. One missing piece distorts the whole. But fear not, the little grey cells, they are aligning the fragments." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his patience worn thin by the storm's delay of his reinforcements, joined them, his boots tracking snow onto the parquet. "The staff are on edge, Monsieur Poirot," he said, rubbing his hands for warmth. "And the guests, they're ready to tear each other apart. We need answers, and soon." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "Answers, Inspector, we shall have. The killer believes they have outwitted us, but Hercule Poirot does not falter. Let us gather the players and see who flinches." The guests were summoned to the library, a grand room of oak shelves and velvet drapes, where the fire crackled with an almost mocking warmth. The air was thick with tension, as Lady Evelyn Carrington, Isabella von Klaus, Dr. Elias Thorne, Clara Beaumont, and Reginald Forsyth took their seats, their faces a gallery of fear, defiance, and calculation. Poirot stood before them, his small stature commanding the room, while Hastings and Inspector Meyer flanked him, notebooks at the ready. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice deliberate and warm, like a storyteller by the hearth. "A crime has been committed in this palais. A crime most ingenious, designed to baffle. Baron von Klaus was poisoned, not stabbed, in a room locked from within. The blood beneath the door, a clever ruse of ink and a trace of crimson. The wax on the key, the ski track, the torn letter, all threads in a tapestry of deception. But the truth, it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot." He paced slowly, his eyes sweeping the group. "Let us consider the motives, Madame von Klaus. Your husband's will favoured you, but infidelity would strip you of his fortune. Dr. Thorne, your expertise with poisons and your liaison with Madame von Klaus, it places you in a perilous light. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your debts and your uncle's refusal to fund your dowry, they sting, no? Monsieur Forsyth, the Baron's accusations of embezzlement threatened your ruin. And Madame Carrington, The blackmail over your husband's death. A secret worth killing to protect." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Isabella's hands twisted her handkerchief. Thorne's spectacles slipped. Clara's lips parted in a silent protest. Forsyth's jaw clenched, and Lady Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her pearls gleaming in the firelight. Poirot raised a finger. "But motives alone do not a murderer make. We must examine the method. The poison, digitalis from the Baron's tonic, required access to his habits. The locked room, it suggests an illusion. The wax on the key hints at a duplicate, yet the bolt, the bolt, it is the heart of the mystery." He paused, letting the silence press against them. "Consider the red ink, mes amis. A bottle from this very library, mixed with blood to stage a fresh crime. Who had access? All of you. But who had the cunning to use it?" Isabella gasped, her eyes darting to Thorne. "I swear I didn't," she began, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "Let us test a theory," he continued. "The Baron retired at midnight, locking his door. The poison, it was administered earlier, perhaps in his brandy or tonic, taken in the library. The stab wound, post-mortem, was theatrics, meant to mislead. But how to enter a locked room? The sure wax suggests a key was copied, but the bolt, it could be manipulated. A string, perhaps, pulled through the keyhole to slide the bolt, then retrieved under the door." Hastings leaned forward, his eyes wide. "A string? Good Lord, Poirot, that's devilishly clever." Poirot's gaze never left the guests. Devilish, yes, but possible. The ski track outside, it suggests someone approached the window, perhaps to create a false trail. The letter signed E.T. points to Dr. Thorne, or is it a plant to mislead? And the glove, monogrammed with H, found under the bed. Yours, Hastings, yet too clean to be involved. A distraction, none? The room was silent save for the storm's howl. Thorne's face drained of colour, his hands gripping his chair. "I'm no murderer," he said, his voice hoarse. "I prescribed the tonic, yes, but I didn't tamper with it." Poirot turned to Isabella. "And you, madame? Your confession of infidelity, it strengthens your motive. Did you aid in this crime, perhaps to secure your fortune?" Isabella shook her head, tears spilling. "I loved Elias, but I didn't kill Heinrich. I couldn't." Clara, her voice trembling, spoke up. "You're wrong about me, Monsieur Poirot. I argued with Uncle Heinrich, but I'd never hurt him. My debts, they're not worth killing for." Forsyth, his voice steady now, added, "The Baron's accusations were a misunderstanding. I was clearing my name, not plotting murder." Lady Evelyn's tone was icy. "Heinrich's blackmail was a burden, yes, but I am no poisoner. You've seen my accounts. I gain nothing from his death." Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained grave. "Each of you protests, yet one or more has woven this crime. Let us consider a new possibility. The Baron himself. Did he stage his own death, perhaps for insurance, to expose a traitor? No, the poison discounts this. The truth lies in the timing." A sudden commotion interrupted. A porter burst in, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector, there's word from the village, an avalanche warning. The roads are blocked, and the slopes above the Palais are unstable. We must evacuate soon." Meyer cursed under his breath, but Poirot remained calm. "Then we must hasten, mes amis. The killer, they rely on this storm to shield them, but the storm, it also traps them." He turned back to the clues, his mind racing. The wax on the key suggested a duplicate, but the bolt's manipulation required precision. A string, as he'd theorized, or perhaps a tool slipped under the door. The red ink mixed with blood pointed to a killer with access to the library and a willingness to stage a scene. The ski track, though faint, suggested an external distraction, but the sealed windows ruled out entry. The digitalis from Thorne's bag was the key. Someone had tampered with it, but who had the opportunity? Poirot paced, his voice rising with conviction. The sure killer is among us, and they are bold. They poison the Baron, then stab him to create a locked room illusion. They plant clues, the glove, the letter, the footprint, to scatter suspicion. But they have made a mistake, and Hercule Poirot sees it. He stopped, his gaze locking on Thorne. "Doctor, your bag, it held the poison. Your affair with Madame von Klaus, it gave you motive. Tell me, did you act alone?" Thorne stood, his face ashen. "I swear I didn't kill him. Yes, I loved Isabella, but I couldn't poison a man." Isabella sobbed, clutching her handkerchief. "Elias, tell them the truth. We were together that night in my room, not his." The admission hung in the air, a new thread in the tapestry. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Together, you say? Then who was in the Baron's suite, administering the poison, sliding the bolt?" The guests exchanged glances, the tension palpable. The fire crackled, the storm roared, and the threat of the avalanche loomed. Poirot knew time was short, but the truth was closer than ever. The killer's mask was slipping, and the little grey cells were poised to tear it away. Chapter 8. Hidden Passages. The Winter Palais, its grandeur dimmed by the shadow of murder, seemed to pulse with the tension of secrets yet to be unveiled. The blizzard outside had reached a fever pitch. Its relentless howl, a grim reminder of the isolation trapping the guests within the hotel's gilded walls. Hercule Poirot, his sharp mind undeterred by the mounting pressure of the avalanche warning, stood on the cusp of unravelling the locked room mystery of Baron Heinrich von Klaus's death. The revelation that poison, not the dagger, had killed the Baron, coupled with the staged bloodstain and wax-smudged key, had tightened the web around the suspects. Now, as the clock ticked toward an uncertain evacuation, Poirot's little grey cells were poised to expose the killer's final deception. Captain Hastings, his face pale with worry, followed Poirot through the Palais's marble corridors. His notebook clutched like a lifeline. "That avalanche warning, Poirot," he said, his voice low as they passed a trembling maid. "It's got everyone on edge. And Isabella's admission, she and Thorne together that night, it changes everything, doesn't it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his dark eyes gleaming with purpose. "It changes much, mon ami, but not everything. The killer's stage is set, but the curtain is rising. We must find the hidden passage through which they moved." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his burly frame tense with urgency, met them in the foyer, where a chandelier cast prisms of light across the snow-dusted floor. "The staff are preparing for evacuation," he reported, his voice clipped. "But I've had them search the upper floors again. Something's not right about that suite, Monsieur Poirot. I can feel it." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "Bon, Inspector, the feeling. It is the whisper of truth. Let us explore the Palais itself. It holds secrets beyond the locked door." The morning's investigation took a decisive turn when Poirot, accompanied by Hastings and Meyer, returned to the Baron's suite. The room, with its Persian rug stained by the staged mix of ink and blood, felt colder now, the air heavy with the scent of cigar smoke and betrayal. Poirot's attention was drawn to a massive bookshelf against the far wall, its carved oak panels adorned with alpine motifs. He ran his gloved fingers along the edges, pausing at a faint seam where the wood met the wall. "Curieux," he murmured, pressing gently. A soft click echoed, and the shelf swung inward. revealing a narrow passage, its stone walls damp with condensation. Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot! A secret door! How did you know?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They notice the uneven wear of the rug, the draught where none should be. This passage, it is the killer's path." The passage, barely wide enough for a single person, led to an adjacent suite, Dr. Elias Thorne's room. The discovery sent a jolt through the group. Thorne, summoned to the scene, paled as he saw the open bookshelf. I didn't know about this," he stammered, his spectacles slipping. "I use my room for meetings with Isabella, yes, but not for murder." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Meetings, Doctor, or murder? This passage, it connects your room to the Baron's. A perfect route for poison, no?" Thorne shook his head, his hands trembling. "I swear, I didn't use it. I didn't even know it existed." Inspector Meyer, inspecting the passage, found faint scratches on the stone floor, as if something heavy had been dragged through recently. "Could be cleaning supplies," he mused, "but it's suspicious. We'll need to question the staff again." The discovery of the passage shifted the investigation's focus. Poirot re-examined the clues in light of this new access. The wax on the key, suggesting a duplicate, was less critical now. The passage bypassed the locked door entirely. The red ink and blood mixture, staged to mislead, could have been placed by someone slipping through the passage after poisoning the Baron. The ski track outside the window, however, remained a puzzle. Perhaps a deliberate distraction to draw attention outward. A new clue emerged during a search of Thorne's room. A pair of Clara Beaumont's slippers, hidden beneath his bed. The soles matched the small footprint found in the Baron's blood, a detail that sent Hastings reeling. Clara! But her motive seemed so weak. Gambling debts, yes, but murder? Poirot's expression was grave. The footprint, it may be another plant. Mademoiselle Beaumont, she is either a killer or a pawn. We must confront her. Clara, summoned to the library, burst into tears when shown the slippers. "Those are mine, yes, but I didn't wear them that night. Someone must have taken them. I keep them by my door." Her distress seemed genuine, but her diary's cryptic entries and her flair for dramatics kept her in the web of suspicion. Poirot noted her tears, but his mind was already turning to the larger picture. Another twist came from Reginald Forsyth. A re-examination of the torn letter signed E.T. revealed it was written in Lady Evelyn's handwriting, not Thorne's. Confronted in the drawing-room, Lady Evelyn's composure faltered. "I wrote it, yes," she admitted, her voice low. "Heinrich was blackmailing me about my husband's death. I sent the note to scare him, to make him stop, but I didn't kill him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A dangerous game, madame. Your note, it became a tool for the killer to cast suspicion elsewhere." The letter, combined with the passage, pointed to a conspiracy. Poirot hypothesized that the killer used the passage to enter the Baron's suite, poison his tonic with digitalis from Thorne's bag, and then stage the dagger wound and ink-blood mixture to confuse the timeline. The footprint, the glove, the ski track, all were distractions meant to scatter suspicion among the guests. To test his theory, Poirot gathered the suspects for tea in the dining hall, where the long table was set with delicate porcelain and silver. The atmosphere was electric, each guest watching the others with barely concealed dread. Poirot, sipping his tisane, dropped a calculated remark. "The passage, mes amis, it changes everything. Who among you knew of its existence? Who used it to slip into the Baron's room?" Thorne's cup rattled, Isabella's eyes widened, and Clara gasped audibly. Forsyth's jaw tightened. while Lady Evelyn's fingers paused on her pearls. The silence was broken by a porter's urgent knock. The avalanche threat had worsened, and evacuation plans were being finalized. "We have hours, perhaps," the porter said, his voice trembling. "The slopes are unstable." Poirot remained calm, his voice steady. "Then we must act swiftly. The killer, they rely on chaos to shield them, but chaos is no match for order and method." He turned to Isabella. "Madame, your meetings with Dr. Thorne, did they take place via the passage? Did you see anything unusual?" Isabella shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "We used my room, not his. I didn't know about the passage, I swear it." Poirot's gaze shifted to Thorne. "And you, Doctor? Your bag held the poison. Your room held the passage. Your affair gave you motive. What say you?" Thorne stood, his face ashen. "I'm innocent, Monsieur Poirot. Yes, I loved Isabella, but I didn't kill the Baron. Someone else used my bag, my room." The accusations hung in the air, unanswered. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the clues. The passage explained the locked room. The poison pointed to Thorne, but the staged elements, the ink, the footprint, the letter, suggested a second hand, someone orchestrating a broader deception. Was Isabella more involved than she admitted? Was Clara's distress a performance? Or was Lady Evelyn's blackmail a cover for a darker act? As the storm roared outside, the Palais felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. Poirot returned to the Baron's suite, his notebook open, sketching the passage's layout. The scratches in the passage, the slippers, the forged letter, all pointed to a killer with intimate knowledge of the Palais and its guests. The truth was close, but the avalanche loomed, threatening to bury it. Poirot closed his eyes, his little grey cells working furiously. The killer's mask was slipping, and he would ensure it fell before the snow did. Chapter 9. The Final Clue. The Winter Palais, its opulent halls shrouded in the tension of an unresolved murder, seemed to teeter on the edge of chaos as the blizzard outside roared with unrelenting fury. The discovery of a secret passage connecting Baron Heinrich von Klaus's suite to Dr. Elias Thorne's room had shattered the illusion of the locked room, but the killer remained elusive, their identity woven into a tapestry of clues and deceptions. Hercule Poirot, his sharp mind undaunted by the looming avalanche threat, stood poised to unravel the final thread of the mystery. The poison that killed the Baron, the staged bloodstain of red ink, the wax-smudged key, and now the hidden passage. All pointed to a killer among the guests, but the truth was tantalizingly close, hidden in one last detail. Captain Hastings, his face drawn with anxiety, followed Poirot through the Palais's marble corridors, his notebook nearly full. "The passage changes everything, Poirot," he said, his voice low as they passed a trembling porter. "But we're running out of time. That avalanche could bury us all before we find the killer." Poirot's moustache twitched, his dark eyes gleaming with resolve. "Time, mon ami, is a pressure that sharpens the mind. The killer believes they have outwitted us, but the final clue, it is within our grasp. We must look where they least expect." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his burly frame tense with urgency, met them in the library, where the fire's glow did little to warm the chill of suspicion. "The evacuation is being planned," he said, his voice gruff. "But the slopes are too unstable to move yet. Monsieur Poirot, we need a breakthrough, or this case will be buried with us." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "A breakthrough, Inspector, we shall have. The Palais itself has spoken, the passage, the ink, the wax. Now, we seek the whisper that binds them." The morning's investigation began with a meticulous re-examination of the Baron's suite. "Poirot," his gloved fingers tracing the edges of the secret passage's entrance, noticed a faint irregularity in the bookshelf's carvings, a small alpine flower, slightly misaligned. Pressing it revealed a hidden compartment, barely large enough for a hand. Inside was a single item, a vial, identical to those in Thorne's medical bag, but filled with a clear liquid. Poirot held it to the light, his eyes narrowing. "Curieux," he murmured. "A sedative, perhaps, or something more sinister." A laboratory was improvised in the hotel's kitchen, where Thorne, under Poirot's watchful eye, tested the vial's contents. "It's not digitalis," Thorne said, his voice unsteady as he adjusted his spectacles. "It's a sedative, chloral hydrate. Harmless in small doses, but mixed with digitalis, it could mask the poison's taste." The discovery tightened the noose around Thorne, whose bag had contained the tampered digitalis vial. Had he switched the sedative for poison, or was he being framed? Poirot's attention turned to the window, where the faint ski track remained, half buried in snow. A closer inspection revealed a new detail. A vase on the Baron's desk, its base wet with melted snow, as if someone had opened the window briefly, letting in a dusting of flakes. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed. "The window! It was opened not to enter, but to create the illusion of an outside threat. The ski track! It is a lie." The melted snow suggested a timeline. The window was opened hours before the murder was discovered, likely to stage the track before the storm's peak. This pointed to a killer with access to the room earlier in the evening, reinforcing the poison's delivery via the Baron's tonic. Interrogations resumed in the drawing room, where the guests sat in uneasy silence, their faces pale under the chandelier's glow. Isabella von Klaus, her raven hair dishevelled, clutched a handkerchief as Poirot questioned her. "The sedative, madame," he said, holding up the vial. "It was found in the Baron's room. Did you administer it, perhaps to calm your husband before the poison?" Isabella's eyes widened, tears spilling. "No, I swear. I took a sedative myself that night. Elias gave it to me, but I didn't touch Heinrich's tonic." Her admission confirmed her reliance on Thorne's drugs, but her trembling hands suggested fear, not guilt. Dr. Thorne, his face ashen, protested when shown the vial. "That's not mine. Someone must have taken it from my bag. Anyone could have." His affair with Isabella and his expertise with poisons kept him at the forefront of suspicion, but his panic seemed genuine, his denial fervent. Clara Beaumont, summoned next, was visibly shaken when Poirot mentioned her slippers, found in Thorne's room. "I told you they were stolen," she cried, her voice breaking. "And that diary. Yes, I was angry with Uncle Heinrich, but I didn't kill him." A new detail emerged. A maid recalled seeing Clara near the library the night of the murder, holding a dagger from the hotel's collection. "I was admiring it," Clara insisted. "It was beautiful, like a prop in a play." Her flair for theatrics muddied her innocence, but her motive, greed, seemed weaker as her debts were less dire than assumed. Reginald Forsyth, his slick demeanour fraying, faced renewed scrutiny. The forged ledgers, while incriminating, were unrelated to the murder, and his alibi held firm under the clock's chime. "I was in my room," he repeated, his voice steady. "I had no reason to kill the Baron." His motive, fear of exposure, remained, but Poirot sensed he was a peripheral player. Lady Evelyn Carrington, her composure a fortress, faltered when Poirot mentioned her blackmail letter. "I wrote it to protect myself," she said, her fingers tracing her pearls. "Heinrich's threats were ruining me. But poison, stabbing, that's not my way." Her motive, silencing the Baron, was strong, but her cool calculation suggested a different role in the drama. Hastings, ever loyal, confided a memory as they walked the snow-dusted terrace. "Poirot, I just remembered. The Baron, that last evening in the library, he muttered something about betrayal by blood. Could it mean Clara, his niece by marriage, or someone closer?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Blood, Hastings. It is a clue, but not literal. The Baron spoke of loyalty, of trust broken. We are near the heart of the matter." A final search of the library, where the red ink originated, yielded another clue. A scrap of paper, tucked behind a book, with a sketch of the bookshelf's alpine flower. It was in Thorne's handwriting, suggesting he knew of the passage, or had been framed to appear so. Poirot tucked the scrap into his notebook, his mind racing. The guests were gathered for dinner, the dining hall's candelabras casting long shadows. The atmosphere was electric, each suspect eyeing the others with dread. Poirot, sipping his tisane, dropped a calculated remark. "The vase, mes amis, it held melted snow. Someone opened the window, not to enter, but to deceive. Who among you played this game?" Thorne's cup rattled. Isabella gasped, and Clara's fork froze midway to her mouth. Forsyth's eyes darted to Lady Evelyn, who remained impassive, her pearls gleaming. The silence was broken by a porter's urgent report. The avalanche risk had escalated, and evacuation was imminent. "We have hours, perhaps less," he said, his voice trembling. Poirot's voice was steady. "Then we must act, for the truth will not wait. The passage, the vial, the snow, they point to a killer who knows the Palais intimately. The betrayal, it is personal." As the storm's wail intensified, Poirot returned to the Baron's suite, his notebook open. The vial of sedative, the melted snow, the sketch of the flower, all converged on a single truth. The killer had used the passage to deliver the poison, staged the dagger and ink to mislead, and planted clues to scatter suspicion. The betrayal by blood, Poirot realized, was not family, but trust, a partner, turned traitor. "The killer is among us," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the passage's entrance. "And they are bold, but not bold enough to escape Hercule Poirot." The Palais, its walls trembling under the storm's fury, held its breath as the final act approached. The truth was within reach, and Poirot's little grey cells were ready to seize it. Chapter 10. The Denouement, the Winter Palais, its opulent halls now a stage for truth, stood on the brink of chaos as the blizzard outside roared with apocalyptic fury. The murder of Baron Heinrich von Klaus, poisoned in a locked room, stabbed post-mortem, and surrounded by a web of clues, had drawn the guests into a tightening noose of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating calm authority, had unravelled the threads of deception. The secret passage to Dr. Elias Thorne's room, the staged bloodstain of red ink, the wax-smudged key, the vial of sedative, and the melted snow in the vase. With the avalanche threat looming and evacuation imminent, the time for revelation had come. The killer, Poirot knew, could hide no longer. Captain Hastings, his face pale with anticipation, stood beside Poirot in the library, where the fire's glow cast long shadows across the oak shelves. "This is it, isn't it, Poirot?" he whispered, clutching his notebook. "You've got them, haven't you?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his dark eyes gleaming with certainty. "Oui, mon ami. The little grey cells. They have aligned the mosaic. The killer's mask falls tonight." Inspector Lucas Meyer, his burly frame tense with urgency, joined them, his voice low. "The porters are readying sleighs, but the slopes are treacherous. We've got an hour, maybe less, before we must move. Monsieur Poirot, give us the truth." Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "The truth, Inspector. It is a light that burns through lies. Gather the guests, the final act begins." The suspects were summoned to the library, where the heavy drapes framed a world of relentless snow. Lady Evelyn Carrington, Isabella von Klaus, Dr. Elias Thorne, Clara Beaumont, and Reginald Forsyth took their seats, their faces a gallery of dread, defiance, and resignation. The air was thick with tension, the fires crackle and the storms howl. The only sounds as Poirot stepped forward. His small stature commanding the room. "Mes amis," he began, his voice warm yet deliberate, like a storyteller weaving a tale by the hearth. "A crime most ingenious has been committed in this palais. Baron von Klaus was poisoned with digitalis, not killed by the dagger in his chest. The blood beneath the door, a clever mix of ink and a trace of crimson, was staged to mislead. The locked room, it was no mystery, for a secret passage led from the Baron's suite to Dr. Thorne's room. The wax on the key, the ski track, the sedative vial, the melted snow, all were threads in a tapestry of deception. But Hercule Poirot sees through the illusion. He paced slowly, his eyes sweeping the group. "Let us review the motives. Madame von Klaus, your husband's will promised you his fortune, but infidelity would give it to Mademoiselle Beaumont. Dr. Thorne, your affair with Madame von Klaus and your expertise with poisons made you a prime suspect. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your debts and your uncle's refusal to fund your dowry gave you reason to resent him. Monsieur Forsyth, the Baron's accusations of embezzlement threatened your ruin. And Madame Carrington, the blackmail over your husband's death, a secret worth killing to protect." The guests shifted, their eyes darting. Isabella clutched her handkerchief. Thorne's spectacles slipped. Clara's lips trembled. Forsyth's jaw tightened, and Lady Evelyn's fingers paused on her pearls. Poirot raised a finger. But motives are not enough. The method, it is the key. The poison was delivered via the Baron's tonic, taken in the library before he retired. The dagger, a post-mortem flourish, was theatrics. The passage allowed entry without disturbing the lock or bolt. But how was the bolt slid? A string, pulled through the keyhole and under the door, retrieved after the crime. The red ink, the ski track, the planted glove, the stolen slipper, all distractions to scatter suspicion. He paused, his gaze locking on Thorne. "Dr. Thorne, your bag held the digitalis, your room held the passage, your affair gave you motive, and the sketch of the alpine flower, found in the library, was in your hand. Did you use the passage to poison the Baron?" Thorne stood, his face ashen. "I didn't kill him. Yes, I knew of the passage. I used it to meet Isabella discreetly, but I didn't poison him. Someone took the digitalis from my bag." Poirot turned to Isabella. "And you, madame? You admitted to the affair. Did you aid Dr. Thorne perhaps to secure your fortune?" Isabella sobbed, shaking her head. "I loved Elias, but I didn't kill Heinrich. I took a sedative that night from Elias's bag, but it was only to sleep." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A sedative, you say? The vial in the Baron's room, chloral hydrate, found in the hidden compartment. It masked the digitalis's taste, ensuring the Baron drank his tonic unaware. And the blood under the door, your blood, Madame von Klaus, from a cut on your finger, mixed with ink to stage the scene." Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her bandaged finger. I cut myself that night, yes, but I didn't stage anything. I was in my room." Poirot's voice grew sharper. "No, madame. You were in the Baron's suite, via the passage, with Dr. Thorne. Together you planned the murder. The Baron discovered your affair and your lover's past. A scandal in London, where patients died under his care, poisoned by digitalis. He threatened to expose you both. So you acted. Thorn lunged forward, his voice desperate. No, I admit the affair, but not murder. Someone framed me, used my bag, my room. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. The clues, they tell the story. The wax on the key, you made a mold, Doctor, to ensure access if the passage failed. The ski track, you created it, opening the window briefly to leave melted snow in the vase, suggesting an outside killer. The slipper, stolen from Mademoiselle Beaumont, was planted in your room to shift blame. The letter signed E.T. was not Madame Carrington's, but yours, Doctor, written to mimic her hand and deepen the deception. He turned to the others. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your debts were a distraction, your diary a red herring. Monsieur Forsyth, your embezzlement was real, but your alibi holds. Madame Carrington, your blackmail was a motive, but your letter was misused by another. The glove, Mon Ami Hastings, was planted to confuse. The true culprits are Dr. Thorne and Madame von Klaus. Isabella collapsed, sobbing. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Elias said it would be quick, painless. Heinrich would sleep and never wake. I only helped with the blood to make it look like a robbery. Thorne's shoulders slumped, his voice breaking. It was her idea. Heinrich was going to ruin us, my career, her fortune. I used the digitalis, yes, through the passage. The dagger was to make it look like a crime of passion. The string slid the bolt, pulled under the door. We thought we'd covered everything. Poirot's voice was calm but unrelenting. You covered much, but not enough. The wax, the snow, the sketch, they betrayed you. The betrayal by blood, as the Baron said, was not family, but trust. His wife and his physician united against him. Inspector Meyer stepped forward, his face grim. Dr. Thorne, Madame von Klaus, you're under arrest. We'll hold you until the sleighs can take us to the village. The guests sat in stunned silence as Meyer led Thorne and Isabella away, their footsteps echoing in the marble hall. Clara wept softly, Forsyth exhaled in relief, and Lady Evelyn's composure returned, her pearls gleaming. Hastings, mopping his brow, turned to Poirot. By Jove, old chap, you did it. But that string trick, how did you know? Poirot smiled, tapping his temple. The little grey cells, Hastings. They see the order beneath the chaos. The killer's stage was clever, but no stage can withstand the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. As the evacuation began, the storm's fury seemed to ebb, the snow falling softer now. The Palais, its secrets laid bare, returned to a fragile peace. Poirot packed his valise, his tisane untouched, his mind already turning to the next mystery. Come, Hastings, he said, his voice warm. The world, it has more puzzles for us to solve.